sign.
Right.
Yeah, I always forget to turn the recording on. It's a good sign. Go for it.
So I had to spend all weekend and Monday to actually get some kind of presentation, but it's here. So so stress, angel or demon, and here we need to actually return to the main three. Oh, and one more thing. I would like to, of course, express my gratitude to the organizers of this meeting for inviting me, especially Bill, a good friend of mine. And so here we go. We need to remember three attributes of life, and three main attributes that separate the living nature from non-living nature is an ability to procreate, to adapt to internal and external environment, and to exchange the energy. And of course, procreation is the main goal of any animal. And in order to achieve that state where animals can procreate, they have to first of all grow, develop, mature. And in order to do that, you need to adapt to be able to survive until you actually reach that age where you can reproduce. So adaptation is a very important, probably most important, I would say, goal of the living beings. And if you think about it, practically all of evolution is a story of adaptation, of the species that adapt better evolved. So with that, we need to go to the issue of why do we need an adaptation? And adaptation is necessary to maintain our internal stability. Claude Bernard formulated his famous law of the internal stability and importance of it. He stated the stability of the internal environment is the condition for the free and independent life. So practically maintaining the stability of internal environment is the most important condition for the life. And it's actually was even called the first law of biology, even though the other laws of biology is as important as this one. So Walter Cannon, an American, coined the term homeostasis. Homeo, the same, stasis, condition of state. And he wrote that mechanism that makes it possible is that which assured the maintenance within internal environment of all the conditions necessary for life of the elements. So he stressed that homeostasis does not occur by chance, but is a result of organized self-government. So homeostasis is a main goal of adaptation. And what is it? Stress. Stress is a non-specific response of the body to any demand for change, said Hans Selye, the author of Theory of Stress. And this theory, Selye, he was studying the general adaptation reaction. So he was stressing the animals till they die, and then he autopsied them, and he came up with this theory of a non-specific response to any demand for change. The body doesn't change the response depending on a stressor that it encounters, whether it's an infection or it's a change in temperature. The whole cascade of general adaptation reaction or stress is executed in response to this demand. How can I change it so I can see the whole screen? Okay. So
What do you need? What do you need to do?
no, I've done it.
Okay.
So what is general adaptation reaction? It's body's response to any demand or change in external or internal environment. Of course, in order to do any change, you require energy. And this body response is necessary for maintenance of homeostasis, and body returns to homeostasis after demand is met. Its adaptation, if the adaptational ability exceeds animal dies. I mean, if adaptational ability is exceeded, then the animal dies. So we need to remember that. Now we have a one cellular or single cell organisms like paramecium. And this paramecium, due to its simplicity, have a very limited ability of adaptation. And that's why any minor change in a environment where it lives, whether it's a change in mineral content or nutritional changes or temperature, it can be overheated, it can be cooled down, paramecium die in mass. However, if the external environment of paramecium is stable, it's practically immortal because it's going to be dividing and dividing and dividing. And it was an experiment where the scientists make paramecium to divide 8,400 times in a row. So the primitive adaptational abilities make paramecium total slave to external causes. It dies from external causes. As evolution persisted, the animals became more and more and more sophisticated. And a main driver of sophistication of the animals practically was an ability to adapt. Now, when we look at what is a disease, it is formulated in one way, this way: stable disturbance of homeostasis leading to loss of function and death. So here we know how important homeostasis is to maintain. And the main organ that maintains homeostasis in the body is hypothalamus. It is a part of the brain, a very old one, but it has a very unique feature. The neurons in hypothalamus have an ability to produce a minuscule amount of hormones, which are called releasing factors, and it sends this releasing factors to pituitary via blood and via direct descent, directly, and it immediately switches to the next task. And it is responsible for all maintenance of homeostasis and coordinating all the body's adaptational needs. And the hypothalamic system is probably the most advanced and effective homeostatic system known to nature. And of course, it can be called a cybernetic system. And a cybernetic system is practically built on very basic negative feedback mechanism. If you're talking about glands and hormones, gland regulator sends the signal, stimulating signal to peripheral gland responds, produces hormone, and the presence of this hormone in sufficient amount will stop the signaling that is stimulating. The hierarchy is three-story hierarchy: hypothalamus, pituitary, peripheral gland, and the response from response of the hypothalamus and pituitary on sufficient level of hormones. It's very simple. Very simple, I would say. Growth and development of the body requires increasing capacity of all three major homeostates, because when in a fetal state, the all these systems, all these homeostats are very primitive, and it takes time for it to develop an increase in capacity to the state where the animal can reproduce, which is the goal of the whole life cycle of the animals. After the procreation is achieved, the prodigy is produced, we become in a practically disposable soma from the point of view of nature. But how do we increase capacity of these regulators? I will demonstrate it on a simple example of the bathroom toilet. The bathroom toilet works on negative feedback mechanism. When the water level falls down, the float goes down and thus open the flow of water into the tank. Float raises up with a raising level of water, and at certain point it stops the flow of water into the tank. And how do we increase the capacity of this system? To increase the capacity of the system, we need to actually increase the size of the tank. And it would be required more water to do the same, or to achieve the same effect. It would require more water to lift the float up sufficiently to stop the influx of water into the tank. And about the same thing happening in the hypothalamic system. So Dr. Dillman, who is a author of neuroendocrine theory of stress, my favorite, he postulated that the only place in the body where all these three homeostats are actually regulated is the hypothalamus. And this is why the hypothalamus is the place where actually aging occurs. But he explained the development and aging from the point of view of a hypothalamus the following way. The development is a change. This steady state, the homeostasis, is stability. Development and stability is not really compatible with each other. So he came with this idea that aging occurs due to slowly increasing capacity of all three systems, and it's achieved by decreasing the sensitivity of the hypothalamus to the negative feedback from peripheral hormones. So, and he explains it by diminished amount of neurotransmitters in the hypothalamus, because all the neural system, as we know, are driven by neurotransmitters. So the ever slowly lowering of the amount of neurotransmitters available for hypothalamus, we will slowly increase the capacity of the system while maintaining the homeostasis of the system. So this is how it was explained by Dr. Dillman. And now we have a situation, a stress, where the balance, this practically need to be disturbed. We have a situation where internal or external environment changing, and we need to actually do something to maintain our homeostasis despite that demand or disturbance. So we maintain the general adaptation reaction, and it's divided in three stages: alarm reaction, resistance, and exhaustion. And if the fight or flight does not end by the end of the resistance stage, exhaustion occurs and the animal dies if this disturbance continues. So how does it achieve this general adaptation reaction? First, what happens is the animal perceives the danger. The senses, organs of senses send the signal to the cortical brain that the enemy is close, nearby, and the fight is inevitable. So what happened at that time? The emotions and response is very emotional. So emotions are actually generated in hypothalamus, the emotions of fear and aggression. And at the same time, hypothalamus send the signal to the through the nervous system to adrenal medulla, and adrenaline is actually released into the bloodstream. So what happens with the injection of adrenaline in a bloodstream? We need to understand that we need to achieve certain goals. So first of all, we have a piloerection and vasoconstriction of the vessels of the skin, which increase the temperature of the body by decreasing emission of heat. And at the same time, redistribution of blood from gastrointestinal and sex organs to the heart, lungs, brain, and muscles, so the organs that will actually participate in a fight. The heart rate increases and the blood pressure also increases to increase the circulation, the speed of flow of blood to deliver more oxygen and nutrients to the tissues. Release of glucose via glycogen and release of fatty acids into the bloodstream as an additional source of energy necessary for supreme performance. And the muscles start to, there is some muscle tremor develops. So the muscles, all these things increasing the body temperature. Because with the higher temperatures, the chemical reactions, of course, are running more efficiently. Also, there is an increase of oxygen utilization by myocardium, which is beneficial during the life or death situation, but outside of life and death situation, it may lead to cardiac ischemia and subsequently to MI, especially in people with some cardiac pathology. So it's dangerous outside of life and death situation. But in this situation, we're fighting for our life, so it's okay. This all changes practically is the same what the athletes, professional athletes, achieve by warming up before their important performances, but it occurs within practically a split second. At the same time, hypothalamus, I would like to, it's a very simple diagram showing adrenaline released, increased heart respiratory rates and blood pressure, blood supply redistributed, temperature, glycogen released, muscular tremor, temperature risen, oxygen consumption increased, an optimal condition for top performance achieved. At the same time, hypothalamus releases the signal for the releasing factors to cause the release of growth hormone, prolactin, and pre-opiomelanocortin. In this case, the growth hormone mobilizes fatty acids from the adipose tissue. Prolactin suppress the production of sex steroids because they're not necessary during the fight, and it's better to actually convert the pregnenolone, available pregnenolone, in a production of cortisol, which is necessary for general adaptation reaction. This pre-opiomelanocortin is a peptide that is then cleaved in ACTH, which, of course, adrenocortic tropic hormone, to release a to release the cortisol, increase the amount of cortisol. Then it is it cleaves in all of these peptides. Gamma LPH with a lipotropic peptide that increase the release of the fatty acids. Melanocortin decreases the appetite, and of course beta endorphin is necessary for pain control, because as we know, the animals during severe stress practically do not feel the pain. All these hormones are released into the blood, and that for you is, and of course, a large amount of cortisol. And this starts the second stage of stress, a resistance. So cortisol released, blood pressure and heart rate is maintained. As well, we all know that cortisol increases blood pressure and heart rate. It causes a rise in blood sugar, even though the blood sugar is not, the sugar is not available, the glucose is not available to achieve from the, to get from the outside sources. The gluconeogenesis and anti-insulin effect of cortisol achieve the hyperglycemia. And of course, gluconeogenesis would initially suppress the immune system, the cellular immunity, because we need to burn the protein, a very valuable material, to actually practically use it for energy. Like people during the war times were burning the antique furniture just to keep themselves alive. So immune system is suppressed, which is beneficial during stress, because stress inevitably causes some trauma and damage to the muscles, and this particles of damaged muscles, proteins from damaged muscles going into the blood, and may cause the autoimmune reaction after the stress subsides. So immune system is suppressed to avoid the autoimmunization. And inflammation is suppressed, which is also beneficial because inflammation means pain, and you don't want to be distracted by pain when you are fighting for your life. So now fight or flight is over. Hypothalamus increases heat emission by vasodilation and sweating. Excess fatty acids are used for cholesterol synthesis to repair the damaged cells, for the construction of the cell membranes. Antidiuretic hormone is released to increase the blood volume in case it is necessary to cover for the loss of blood during the fight. Cortisol decreases, level of cortisol decreases, and that increases the synthesis of proteins, and the animal falls into this state of bliss, the refractory period, because during the stress, such a large amount of neurotransmitters are used that actually it requires the restoration period, which is practically the period of apathy after the stress. However, we need to ask a question. How come negative feedback, when a stress starts, the cortisol level rises? How come the cortisol stimulation of adrenal glands from the hypothalamus does not stop, and cortisol does not stay at the same level or drop? The mechanism is very similar to aging. The decrease in neurotransmitters, the increased utilization of neurotransmitters, actually decreases the sensitivity of hypothalamus to the negative feedback from adrenal glands. And so the stress and aging in this case is very similar, because of the gradual in case of the aging and short-term in case of stress decline in neurotransmitters. Defense is expensive and it leads to diseases of adaptation and accelerates aging. That we know. Person who is under constant stress is going to be aging faster. And you can look at the professional athletes who stress themselves during the strenuous training and tour sport competition. They look older than their age, often very visible. I watch tennis and you see that the 25, 26-year-old player look good 10 years older than he actually is. Now, increased utilization of tryptophan and tyrosine lead to post-stress deficit. And if the deficit is severe enough, to depression. And you know that we treat depression often with the SSRI or SNRI, which actually increasing the signaling of a norepinephrine and serotonin. And unfortunately, after the severe stressful episode, our hypothalamus does not return to the stage it was before the stress. There is some damage done and some further depletion of a neurotransmitters. So the sensitivity to the negative feedback is more pronounced. Now, if we look, I'm not going to touch today on the topic of the sex hormones, but if you look at the all of the hormones, major hormones levels, you see that the hormones are rising to about 20 to the highest level to about 20 years of age, when the reproductive activity is most most active, and the cortisol stays pretty much the same on the bottom, the brown line. But then after the age of 30, the cortisol levels start to climb up, and the further it goes, the higher the level of cortisol becomes. Well, it's because during the with aging, there is an actually breakdown of the neurofeedback, of the negative feedback in a reproductive system. And after a certain time, it dysregulates. But in a case of cortisol, that doesn't happen. And cortisol continues to rise with age. And that creates a condition that Dr. Dillman, the author of theory of stress, of neuroendocrine theory of aging, called hyperadaptosis. And hyperadaptosis is caused by this gradual increase and gradual and continuous increase in cortisol levels. It's a condition when an organism is living with permanently elevated level of cortisol, as if in a state of permanent stress. And hyperadaptosis inevitably develops in any aging animal. So what's the cause? The cause is a loss of sensitivity of hypothalamus to the action of cortisol and the diminished negative feedback. For example, when dexamethasone suppression tests were performed on rats of the different ages, at the age of 2 weeks, the suppression of production of cortisol was 51%. But the group of 8-year-old rats have dropped their cortisol production only 11%. So we see the very big difference in a hypothalamic response to the cortisol, to dexamethasone. Now, in humans, the same experiment was conducted on 24-year-olds and 56-year-olds. And in 24-year-olds, the drop in a production of cortisol was 51% or 52%. And in 56-year-old, the drop was only 39%. And this sensitivity to cortisol will decrease with age. So that is the effect of a diminished response of hypothalamus to a negative feedback from cortisol. So dysregulation of adaptation with age happens, and this negative feedback is disturbed. Hypothalamic pituitary axis becomes more inert. It takes longer time to achieve an equilibrium, and response to stress become excessive because the system doesn't turn off due to the decreased sensitivity of hypothalamus. And the margin of tolerable changes in external or internal environment becomes limited. So the older individual have less ability to withstand this demand. The demand, and in a very advanced age, even minor stress may cause death. We know of people saying, oh, he died from the old age. But people don't die from old age. There must be some trigger for this death in old age. And very minor stress can cause death in an elderly individual. Can be minor cold, or maybe he was exposed to some heat too much, or minor infection, whatever. So that will cause death in a very old individual due to the inability to mount this general adaptation reaction. And now we see also the diseases that are associated with elevated cortisol. It's a hypertension, diabetes, of course, the elevated sugar will cause the obesity, where the sugar is going to be deposited in a adipose tissue. The muscle wasting, if you look at the older individuals, even very fit one, you will see the discrepancy between the size of the muscles in his legs and torso, and legs look thin. Of course, increased level of cortisol causes immunodeficiency, and the inadequate responses of immune system will cause or may cause autoimmune disorders, and the immunodeficiency also will cause the cancer, not cause, but increase the possibility of the development of cancer. Now, back to the topic of the lecture, is there a beneficial stress? And 40 years after publication of his stress theory, Hans Selye wrote a book which was called Stress Without Distress. And he called, actually in original works, he called the general adaptation reaction, the state of stress, he called it distress. But then, just like children, they often, and we too, we often use the word cause instead of word because, omitting the first syllable, just to make it simple. The same thing happened to the word stress, and word distress, by omitting the first syllable, were made into stress. Dis means bad in Latin. And in his book, Stress Without Distress, Selye came with a word eustress. Eu is a good in Greek. So he was writing about this positive stress and negative stress, such as, eating healthy food, light exercises that don't cause too much of the stress reaction and so forth. But we need to remember that we have all our this positive or negative attitude towards stress depends on our evaluation. For example, he writes in his book the very interesting story. Let's say it's a war going on. The mother is sitting at home. Her son went to fight in the war. The knock at the door, she goes, opens the door, and there is a messenger from the front line who is telling her that her son is killed in a battle. You can imagine all this cascade of reactions that I described when I was describing stress going on in her body, because it's a very severe stress. So she survives that stress. She mourns. Time passes by. A year and a half later, she's sitting. She already kind of learned to live without her son. Knock at the door. She opens the door, and there is her son, unharmed. So apparently, the first messenger delivered this message to a wrong address. This positive happening in her life will cause the same exact cascade of reactions like the negative. So the effect on the body is going to be the same. So it doesn't matter how do we evaluate the stress and the general adaptation reaction. It does have the same effect on the body. So, for example, the exercise, light exercise, not to the point of total exhaustion, Celia considered beneficial, and we all consider beneficial. But for what reason? It is a stress, so it does put some strain on our endocrine system and does cause some degree of aging. But at the same time, it increases the endurance. It increases the function. It's a conditioning of the body. So in the future, the body will be able to run faster or maybe swim further. So it does have some positive effect, but it doesn't relate to stress in reality. It is just a conditioning. It's that we're running faster or swimming. So there is no such a thing as a good stress or a bad stress. It's how we look at the stress. And if we look at it from this point of view, the stress is an angel until we finish our reproductive life. Because before we finish reproducing, stress saves us from death, allowing us to actually conclude the cycle of a reproductive animal. However, if you're looking at the stress in the second part of life, where you already past prime time, past 30, let's say. Of course, nowadays we are living longer and women and men reproducing much later. But in a normal cycle of life, if you want to reproduce at the peak of your reproductive ability, it's about up to 30. So after you finish your reproduction, stress becomes practically detrimental and increasing and speeding up the process of aging. However, even in that time, the stress, a real stress when it comes to the life and death situation, is an angel. The stress that is unnecessary, that we self-inflict, is very detrimental because there is no reason to have stress. Life doesn't depend on it. So there is some studies on hormones that were there. And now we can go ahead to the, hello? Oops.
Yes, go ahead.
Huh?
You're good.
You're good.
Oops. Now we can go to the discussion. If anybody wants to discuss. Hello?
So, yes. Anybody have any questions? Comments? So how can we put this into some practical use?
In a practical use, there is certain things that we can do. First of all, as I already talked about the deficit of neurotransmitters that causing the decrease in response, hypothalamic response to negative feedback. So of course the attempt to maintain neurotransmitters in a good supply is very important. So probably supplementing with amino acids such as L-tryptophan or tryptophan or 5-HTP. Also the maybe supplement with L-tyrosine, which will result in increased production of norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine. Use of neurosteroids, GABA neurosteroids, maybe pregnenolone or progesterone, and DHEA, which is also neurosteroid. So try to, we need to try to maintain the levels of hypothalamic neurotransmitters after the age of 30, of course, especially. Support of adrenal glands with the vitamin C, magnesium, again, pregnenolone. And I think the most important part of it is make people to understand that the stress is a very beneficial thing if it's used to save the life. And it's very detrimental when it's just a response to some kind of unpleasant stimuli that is not as important for our life. When some thug attacks your wife on a street, there is a reason for you to exercise your general adaptation reaction, get into a fight, and defend your loved ones. There is a reason for that. But when, for example, you are stuck in traffic going to the airport and you feel like you are missing the plane, it's probably worthwhile to ask yourself a question. Do I really want to lose 2 weeks of my life or a week of my life because of this loss of money or maybe 1 day for this airplane tickets? So we need to choose which general adaptation reaction to allow in our bodies and which is not allowable. So it's mostly a psychological training in order to not to allow ourselves to respond with a major stress to a minor disturbances or demands. Psychotherapy, not psychotherapy, I would say the meditation, yoga, tai chi, the how do you call it? Guided imagery, a lot of tapes available. People just need to find the tape that the imagery that works for them best. And some adaptogens, ashwagandha, electrococcus, rhodiola, and so forth. That's I think that's the only way to deal with the damage that not damage to deal with stress, because damage is an angel and a demon, and we need to use it as an angel and try to stop using it as a demon. I have a friend who responds with everything with a severe stress. If he stays in the intersection and the green lights up and a car in front of him doesn't immediately start, you look at him and you see a person who is getting into fight of his life while sitting in a car. Is it wise? No. So this is probably the secret that the wise people use to kind of control the damage that inevitably occur during the fight of light reaction. Hello?
Yep. Any particular, you do any type of like a systemic workup or, any lab tests that you look at? Any,
Well, there is a laboratories that analyzing the neurotransmitters in the urine. I heard different opinions about it, because some people say that urine neurotransmitters do not really represent the neurotransmitters in a central nervous system, but the testing is available. Of course, the diurnal cortisol, the 4-probe saliva cortisol is very helpful. DHEA sulfate, because DHEA is actually opposing cortisol in some way. It's like yin and yang. So if the person, due to extremely stressful conditions of life, the person develops a condition of adrenal fatigue we all know about, or asthenia, like it used to be called before, and some mild degree of adrenal insufficiency, if you give them the DHEA, it just will exacerbate the condition. So yes, DHEA, cortisol testing, micronutrients, and so forth. So it's just probably the good talk with the patient, explaining to them how much damage they do by exercising this very valuable tool of adaptation for nothing. It's like an army. Army is very expensive to keep. It's probably the biggest expense of any country. But you use it only in a certain situation when it's a life or death situation. Otherwise, you're just wasting your army. Same thing, the general adaptation reaction. It's need to be saved for war times, but shouldn't be used in peace times.
okay. Anybody else? Questions, comments? So just to reiterate, Dr. Berman, so your recommendations for, stressful conditions include what?
For stressful conditions,
Yeah.
support of the hypothalamic pituitary axis. And I mean, the biggest recommendation is to use the general adaptation reaction only when it's necessary. It's not necessary to sit and sweat in a car if you're late for the airplane. There was this story, I don't remember the name of the film, about this lawyer who was sent to United States to defend some American guy who was accused by Soviets in espionage. It was a film with Tom Hanks, I think. And I heard an interview of a real guy, a real lawyer, who went there to Soviet Union to defend this American agent. And he met before the court date, a day before. He came to visit him in prison, and the next day, it was the day when it would be decided whether he rot in a gulag, or he goes home exchanged by some Russian agent. And when he came to his prison cell, he saw the guy who was completely calm, absolutely without even a gram of stress. And he was so shocked with his behavior, he said, "Don't you worry about what happened tomorrow?" And the guy raised his eyebrows and he said, "Will it help?" So if you're sitting in a car waiting for your light and you're in traffic, going to airplane, will it help for you to really experiment all the cascade of general adaptation reaction and damage your health? That's what needs to be explained to the person. And everything else is kind of in addition. The supplements that maintain the neurotransmitters, the GABA active neurosteroids, the all this complex of support for adrenal fatigue. I think it's all secondary. The main thing is for person to understand and to change their attitude towards life and understand that, you don't want to age early and age fast and die faster because you don't know how to respond to the minor adversities of life. Minor adversities, not a large adversity. There is many adversities in life where there is a life and death situation, and I don't think that anybody who have a common sense would actually waste this very valuable resource, such as a adaptive system, to minor, really non-important things. Of course, there is the easy way to do it is by giving antidepressants, the SNRIs and SSRIs and some kind of calming agents, natural valerian root, what else? The chamomile and stuff like that. Everything should be directed towards minimizing the inadequate reactions and minimize the use of the system so it lasts longer.
I have a question in the chat here. Can low pregnenolone and cortisol levels be attributed to mitochondrial dysfunction or enzymatic dysfunction? What can be done about it?
Well, I think they will. I didn't read any literature. I need to actually do research on that. My main interest is testosterone, of course. I do a lot of hormone replacement therapy, and I read an article that testosterone has a very protective effect and restoring effect on mitochondria, and that actually can explain the testosterone action against dementia, because it increases the mitochondrial performance and intercellular energy in neurons. That I've read. Cortisol, apparently it does affect negatively the mitochondria because of the effect on the sugar, blood sugar, of course, and subsequent effect on a neuropathy and all the neurons with excess sugar. But also, we need to remember that sugar is the preferential food for the brain in a younger age, and that the ketone bodies are preferential food for the brain in the later parts of life. So apparently, I would think that yes, it would be influence on mitochondrial function, but I did not put my attention of my research to that.
Okay. How about Bach flower remedies?
What?
Bach flower remedies?
What is that?
Dr. Richwine, you want to opine on
I
that?
don't know.
We've used a few of those. Those are homeopathic remedies. They have.
Yeah, they're like homeopathic. I was recommended them by Dr. Robert Fulford, was one of my mentors, and he's the one who really brought up how they were helpful. So, and I considered, since he'd already been in 60 years of practice when he was teaching me, and he had 2 30-year practices in a row, having now worked for 60 years, I would listen to what he had to say. And it just occurred to me that this guy was talking about rebalancing. What about Bach flower remedies? Anyway, they're kind of flower homeopathic extracts in a way. Anyway, I'll unmute.
Well, listen, of course, if you take the patient, we kind of lately do not use a classical homeopathy. It's very rare that somebody use classical homeopathy in a real way. The more of what we do is some kind of remedies, combination of homeopathic remedies in a pretty low dilutions, which is kind of, the attempt. And of course, I am a big fan of homeopathy, and I'm sure the proper combination of homeopathic remedies can definitely, from one point of view, restore the brain function after the hypothalamic function. But the homeopathy is actually the science of studying of the symptoms and repertorizing the homeopathic remedies rather than using certain remedy for certain condition. That's a modern homeopathy. And of course, I would say, like, for example, when I was dealing with heal, they had a neuro-heal, gallium heal that would be used for these conditions. The timer, I forgot the name of the thymus support, because this triad, the cellular triad, is the hemorrhages and hypertrophy of adrenal glands, the stomach ulcers, and the early atrophy or atrophy of the thymus. And that's a so-called cellular triad, which were present in every single animal that was stressed to death. But yes, I mean, there is some calming oils like, what's the name of it? Gardenia or I mean, I don't remember. I'm not into very much into aromatherapy, but yeah, I'm sure there is a lot of stuff you can do, homeopathic, maybe acupuncture, calming down the system and restoring some kind of some elements. Everything helps.
Dr. Hartman asked about growth hormone releasing peptide for immune improvement.
Growth hormone releasing peptide I used because I was afraid to use growth hormone. There was a horror stories about using growth hormone, not from the point of view of growth hormone action, but from the point of view of regulations and boards. I very rarely see in the patient, frankly, in my practice, where they demonstrated the rise in IGF-1 and IGF-BP3 after using the growth hormone releasing hormones like sermorelin, ipamorelin. Maybe they work, but I didn't see this drastic increase in IGF-1 and IGF-BP3 in these patients. I mean, in this case, why
certainly.
not use? Why not
And
to
certainly,
use
certainly
growth
not as dramatic as growth hormone itself, but you can get a 30 to 40% increase in IGF-1. Usually it's a combination. So growth hormone releasing peptide, from, if I recall, is from the ghrelin pathway. It's the second pathway.
Right.
Right. And so it's ipamorelin, hexamorelin, GHRP2 and 6, I think were the early ones.
Right.
And they use them in combinations with
But of course, cortisol is very, very catabolic. So any anabolic hormones, testosterone, growth hormone, DHEA, would work to mitigate the effect of elevated cortisol, especially DHEA.
Okay.
But it's not only elevated cortisol. I mean, elevation of cortisol, yes. As I said, the adaptation system actually becomes very lagging. I mean, it's like the how do you call it? It's like when you have the water in a tank supposed to already stop, but it doesn't stop yet. And it overflows when the float reaches certain position. It's supposed to close it, but system is just so powerful it continues working. And of course, if you get this anti-catabolic effect of any anabolic hormones, it would be very but just simply decreasing the cortisol level, you can achieve it with dilantin, which increase the cortisol excretion in the kidneys, and it's pretty effective. But if you just go into dilantin and decrease the amount of cortisol, it may probably increase the responsiveness of hypothalamus to cortisol, but you would risk developing of some kind of adrenal insufficiency. So probably it's better to protect yourself from the hyperadaptosis by some health procedures, lowering the cortisol level and avoidance of unnecessary stress. I'm not talking about avoidance of stress, period, but avoidance of unnecessary stress. It's a mental attitude that matters.
Okay. Not sure what you mean, Dr. Burgess. Very solid and interesting. Good. Now for compliance. Thanks, Dr. Berman. I'm not sure what you mean by now for compliance. I'm not patient's compliance, regulatory compliance.
To what?
I don't know. That was in the chat. There was a comment.
Oh.
I wasn't sure. Metformin helps with insulin sensitivity. Is there anything? Wait, I missed the rest of it. Is there anything that helps with cortisol sensitivity?
Cortisol sensitivity? You mean of the hypothalamus?
I'm answering. I'm just reading you the questions. So yes, the answer is yes in the hypothalamus.
No, the only thing we need to remember that according to this theory, the lack of neurotransmitters in hypothalamus results in decreased sensitivity to all the hormones, not only cortisol, to sex hormones, to cortisol. It's just the fact that the system becomes more and more, the capacity of the system becomes so high that it cannot handle itself. We grow, we develop, we reach the reproductive age, and all these processes continue to go on. And that's a dysregulation of this negative feedback is because the hypothalamus loses the sensitivity to these hormones. So the only way maybe to restore the sensitivity is supplementing the hypothalamus with the amino acids and hormones that will help hypothalamus to maintain the certain amount of neurotransmitters to be able to respond more keenly to the changes in the changes in hormones via negative feedback.
Okay.
Hypothalamus loses sensitivity continuously. That's what the neuroendocrine theory of aging is. The system needs to grow. The system needs to grow in all three major homeostats. And in order for it to actually mature, it needs to gradually decrease the sensitivity and rise the level of the hormones to the level when it would be sufficient to trigger the puberty and go into reproductive state. And after that, we're a disposable soma. Nobody cares. Nobody cares except us who live long enough and anti-aging physicians.
Yeah, for us to live enough. I think Dr. Burgess was asking about is there any thing that wrapped up with the parasympathetic sympathetic cyclic action synced to cortisol release?
Oh, of course. I mean, the proper management of sleep and wake times, use of melatonin, use of some sleeping aids, some tryptophan, what else was actually recommended in amino acids, tailoring. Sleep is very important, maintain the sleep-wake time corresponding to the time of the day, avoidance of the blue light at night, of course, general measures that would regulate the sympathetic parasympathetic system, because there is a lot of people who like adrenaline. I read an article recently about this, another article about this good and bad stress, and they say that actually stress that is experienced as pleasure not necessarily is good. Even though it gives us pleasure, in effect, it also, every stressful event increases the threshold for negative feedback. Every single stress event should be evaluated retrospectively, whether it was harmful or it was beneficial.
Like making sure you could get on the Zoom call easily, right?
Right.
Right. That's stressful enough.
I started to talk about the fact that on Saturday I lost my presentation file, period.
Right.
I still don't know where it is. So I was sitting and reproducing, these slides. And I can tell you, first I say, oh my God, I need to reproduce the slide. And then I say, okay, I was planning to prepare for my presentation no matter what. So I would reproduce slides and I will rethink something and it will be just beneficial. So I kind of calm down, but I'm a don't give a damn guy if I can. I try not to really get excited, negatively, especially excited about stuff.
It does you no good.
Yeah, I mean, we need to compare it to life and death situation. We need to compare it to life and death situation. I learned it hard way in 2010, 2011. No, 2009, whatever. I was celebrating 55th anniversary, 55th birthday with my friends. My wife was away to Japan, and my financial situation at that time was total ruin due to the crisis. And at the same time, I opened a new business and it was not taking off as fast as I wanted. And I lost my previous business because I was kind of screwed up by the guys who bought my business. So everything was falling apart. I was losing my house. I was losing my office building, everything.
You were
So
ungeblugen.
Huh?
You were ungeblugen.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that was messed up.
Completely.
Okay.
So I've celebrated with my friends this my 55th birthday, and it was in Miami, and I stayed in my friend apartment here, a beautiful penthouse on the beach in Miami Beach. And in the middle of the night, I'm waking up with a panic attack. And you know, panic attack is adrenaline, pure adrenaline. I mean, the heart is beating, you're short of breath, you're sweating, I mean, horrible. And somehow at that moment, it flashed on me, just flashed in my mind, the whole situation of my family during the Second World War, where they sitting in a siege St. Petersburg under bombs, under shelling, and I think it was a pound or half pound of bread a day that they had from the government, and that's where they were to survive on that. The people dying, falling down and dying in the streets, you know, from hunger. My father is on the front line, ready to get killed. And and it occurs to me at this very moment, it occurred to me, you're sitting here in the wonderful penthouse. You have a roof over your head. You have a profession. Your family is healthy. There's no death, no famine around you, no disease. What is there to ask God for except that? I mean, you have everything you need. And after that, I don't allow stress. I compare this thing to what I saw in that flash, and it's not worthwhile to be stressed. It's kind of inner understanding of how to deal with that.
That was a good story.
Yeah, I thought it was encounter with God. I'm kind of
Mhm.
religious guy a little bit, so I think it was just a God-sent saving for me at that time.
Mhm.
Since
That
then,
that was a nice story.
yep.
I like
Thank
that. I like that. Okay. You have any final thoughts here? Wrap, summaries, final thoughts.
Final thoughts is that
Yeah.
stress is an angel when it is used according to its purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and devil if it's not.
Like most things in life,
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I was gonna mention that, it's kind of odd because, you know, a lot of people are coming out now and saying, take cold showers because it puts stress on you. It gives you increased telomeres so that you actually have anti-aging effect. And also, fasting, which is a kind of another stress, is actually supposed to be, intermittent fasting is supposed to be good. So it kind of, I know we were talking about there can't be good stress, bad stress, but there must be. There must be. Anyway, that's what I'll leave that.
Well, I think it's not really the stress that makes it beneficial. That's what I think. For example, I'm an avid bather. I have at home a Russian steam bath, and practically I go to this Russian steam bath 3, 4, 5 times a week. And Russian steam bath is much, much more intense than sauna. And of course, it is stress. But at the same time, it's mitigated because your blood vessels are practically dilated. you undergo the detox with this profuse sweating. You spend time without thinking of daily, chores and stuff like that. And then you go jump into cool pool and go back and so forth. Yes, it is. Of course, it is stress, but there is probably activation of heat shock proteins and all the other major changes in the body that correspond. It's not only stress, I think. It's probably something else on top of it. Like, for example, intermittent fasting. I don't really believe in intermittent fasting unless it's done right. And right, in my point of view, is that when you get your food, let's say in the morning, you get one big meal in the morning, and after that, you don't eat till the next morning. Well, let's say you get a big meal in the morning or decent meal in the morning, some early lunch, and after that, you don't eat until you do create your hypoglycemia at night and produce some growth hormone. Instead, many people are just getting, what's the difference between the guy who has horrible eating habits, who doesn't eat all day long, and then he comes home at night, and at 9 o'clock he stuffs himself, and then he goes to sleep. And then he doesn't eat breakfast because he's not hungry. And he goes till the next evening. I don't think it's any benefits to it. I read the book of Paul Bragg. Probably many people know about it. The guy was fasting 100 days a year. And when he died, he actually drowned, and he was not identified. So they did an autopsy, and autopsy shows that the conclusion was that it's a man in his mid-60s in a perfect health who died from drowning. And at that point, he was 96. But he was fasting 100 days a year. And the periods were long. He once a year, he fasted 21 days every year. And then every week, he fasted a day. And every month, he fasted a week. So that's fasting is really the result in a circadian activation and all the other activation of genes. But there is a stress, but it's not a stress that's beneficial. It's something else.
Well, 30 years, saved the age time, that is beneficial.
Right.
But I'd rather go to the Russian restaurant with you down there in Miami.
Yeah.
So,
but I think it's beneficial to kind of expose yourself to the long period of calorie deprivation, not nutritional deprivation. Because, for example, there was a study on a rat in the St. Petersburg Institute of Oncology where they compare the life span of rats who were eating practically all you can eat buffet every day. And then the other group of rat that was given exactly 40% of what the other rats ate, calorie-wise. And these underfed rats lived 30 to 40% longer than fats who were allowed to eat as much as they want. So prolonged fasting, we don't know. For example, these people from the concentration camps that survived, or the siege of the cities where they were a long time without food, those who survived lived long time. Out of survivors of St. Petersburg siege, I think over 80% of them lived well beyond 80-year-olds, well beyond 80. But we don't know whether it was just the people with the better genes who survived that stuff, rather than the people who were fasting for a long time. There was no experimentation on them at that time.
Hmm.
And they had tremendous amount of stress.
Okay. All right, Dr. Berman. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you.
And let's see if I can. I'm going to unshare your screen here. I think maybe not. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Okay, there we are. So let us, anybody have any questions, comments about anything? So this weekend I was at the Nevada Osteopathic Medical Association. I gave the talk that if anybody's going to AMMG in Denver, that's kind of where I do my tryouts. And it was actually on testosterone side effects. That's what it was. But the second half of it was on ethics in the AOA, and it was sort of our situation. And I'm writing up sort of a summary of what's gone on over the past month or so with our society. I'm going to post it on the website when it's finished. Hopefully it should be finished by the end of the week. And those of you, Dr. Berman, if you're not up to speed, we were unceremoniously drubbed out of the AOA. And one of the big complaint was that we strayed from our mission of rheumatology and autoimmunity. That was kind of the excuse. And I'm still having a little bit of a hard time letting it go. And so what I have here on the screen was that, so OMED, which those of you know is the AOA's medical convention that they have every fall. The last 2 years have been online, and we've been part of that. And they've made video courses out of the video lectures. And I just happened to be perusing it. I was looking at ours because we were part of it, because we actually sold quite a few programs, and we've netted about $39,000 over the last 2 years from our programs is for our treasury. And I came up with this. This was the OMED's 2020 from the neurology and psychiatry. And look at the topics that they covered here: asthma and COPD, acid-base disorders, commercial airline flight emergencies, pulmonary hypertension, high-yield OBGYN. I'm preaching to the choir here, but the complaint was that we strayed from our mission of rheumatology, and I mean, this is right in our face here, and nobody's told these people they can't do this, and we're going to throw them out. So what part of the lecture that I gave a lecture on Saturday morning on ethics in the AOA, and I went through all of their ethical tenets that, if you look on the AOA's website, the tenets that they hold, that they're transparent, and that they're they build the box, and they're supportive of their physicians. So I just kind of throw that out for thought. So what we've done this week is we have received our charter from the state of Nevada, and a tax EIN number. There was a slight mistake on the 501c3 application, so we corrected that, and that's actually gone through now. And we actually have an official corporation called the American Osteopathic Society of Integrative Medicine. We have a bank account, and like I said, we have all the corporate structures. So next, what we need to do is we need to have a meeting. We need to have a election of officers. Now, previously the interest has been sort of slight, and so those of us that have been part of the core, that's become it. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to send out one of our emails. I've had some interest in some folks stating that they want to help. If anybody wants to be part of our say hierarchy, and you don't have to be a DO, please let me know. We'll get together a slate of officers, and because we're getting ready to present to the AOA for a formal charter. the big objection will be that we're duplicating other subspecialties. So my other lecture, I gave a 2-hour lecture on Saturday morning. I kind of use NOMA as a tryout because there's like 10 people in the audience. So if I mess up, it doesn't really matter. But the tryout was I used Hashimoto's thyroiditis as a sort of a banner and compared conventional medicine versus integrative medicine. And it was a 2-hour lecture. It seemed to go well. If anybody has any material on any other entities, my other entity that I'm probably going to expand on is polycystic ovaries. These are two things that I spend a lot of time on. So we have a lot of material on that. And so I went through. Let me see if I have it up here. It's going to give you the. No, that's not it. And this was the lecture that we gave on the integrative sort of the integrative the case for integrative medical subspecialty at the AOA. And I can do this one night if you're interested. If you're not interested, that's okay too. And I go through sort of the core osteopathic tenets. Here they are. I like especially this one, transparency.
It's not showing on the screen, Bill.
Oh, hang on.
You have to maybe go out and come back in, or
there we go. How about now?
Yep.
Got it now. Okay. So I especially like this one, transparency. Those of you who don't know, we were sort of hitting the back of the head in the middle of the night, and we were decertified, and it was kind of a done deal. So here, is the AOA respects those it serves with open communication and transparency. None of that was done. Here they are, the North Star of the osteopathic profession, promoting patient care. They strive to build the box, not live within the confines. And here they say that, they will never, by word or deed, cast imputations upon, fellow osteopaths. So, those are their tenets. This was the resolution. I'm just doing this real quick. They stated we strayed from our mission. That was the excuse they used. They found an ad that I had written 4 years ago for a medical database that we had advertised in, and that's what they used as our as the reason. The same day that this resolution was written into the House of Delegates resolutions, it was on page 172 of 245 pages. We had received a 5-year recertification for our educational program, and one of the if you saw the video at all at the House of Delegates, the second one, the 20-minute video, where the guy got up and said that our programming was substandard. Exactly on the same day that they recertified us for 5 years, which is the longest that they give. And this is the letter that we got from them, the recertification. I'd forgotten about it, but Bruce Fong had out the Nevada one out over there, and I'd forgotten we'd even gotten this. So I also went through the pillars of medical ethics. Beneficence, do no harm, do no harm, beneficence, which is doing good, autonomy, the patient has the ultimate responsibility. We're the patient, and justice, were these actions justified? So as you can see, as you saw from the thing that I just showed you, neurology and psychiatry, we're doing pulmonary medicine, OBGYN, they're okay. We're not. So the big fight's going to be, they're going to tell us that we're just duplicating other subspecialties. So I need your cards and letters. I need your tips and techniques. How do you take care of whatever it is you're taking care of that's different from just a white bread medical doctor. That's what I'm going to need to show. And Dr. Burgess was very upset with what I did to our logo. First of all, this was our logo in here, just this centerpiece here. I put it on a sort of a cityscape, and then I put canceled on it. So he was kind of upset with that. So we're looking to make a new logo, and we're going to we're going to rise from the dead. We are invited to go to OMED for 2022, and we are and we're going to be there. So that's in Boston, October 27th to the 30th. It's the same weekend as AMMG, and so I'm supposed to do AMMG on Friday, the 28th. I'll be in Denver, and then Saturday I'll be in Boston. We'll be running our program there, and hopefully we'll have everything in place we need to sort of take the place by storm. Anybody have any comments, questions? If you're interested, I've had a few people call me and say they're interested in participating, helping out, and I can use all the help I can get. Even just, helping schedule, folks on Tuesday nights. Thanks, Dr. Richwine. If anybody else have any comments? So that's it for this week. Like I said, I'm writing up. Dr. Spear, you're always quiet. You're the one that I feel badly about. Having fallen into this kind of quagmire. So I should have, by the end of the week, I should have the sort of a summary written up. I'm going to put it on our website. It'll be on the homepage, and it will we'll sort of expand it from there. We still have all these videos are still webinar, or still in aosrd.org/webinars. Let me mark that down, aosrd.org/webinars. And if you need to get in touch with me, drbill9@gmail.com, get me there. Let us continue on. We're the Happy Warriors. I'm still having a little bit of a hard time letting go here. I'm still in the sort of the grief stage, but I'm getting to the the acceptance. So but when I see things like like what it just stumbled on this thing, the neurologist, not a problem, so gives us pause. But I think in the long run, we're going to be better off. We're going to be able to expand our base and our reach. We won't be don't want to say stuck, but we're the rheumatic diseases was kind of a confining box. So I think we're going to be better off. If they accept us, great. If they don't accept us, we're still going to be here. And those of you who don't know, what the geniuses who threw us out forgot was that we are ACCME certified, which means that we can still grant AMA credits. We cannot grant AOA credits. So go figure that one. And in fact, I forgot to let you know, our video course on traumatic brain injury is 5.75 CME credits, AMA certified CME credits, but not AOA. So that was passed last week. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know. And I'll get some information out on that when I get a chance. After that, anybody else, any questions, comments? Thank you so much. We'll be here again next week, same time, same station. And we'll have another great speaker. Dr. Berman, if you're on the line still, thank you so much. Dave, take care. Dr. Gerber, great. Dr. FARK, I know you're new here, and thank you for being with us. And Kylie, of course, always.
Thank you, Bill. I'm here. I'm listening all your story about this decertification and stuff like that. And as I said,
it's a story. It's a bit of a stress. So, Dr. Patel, thank you for being with us again. We'll be on again next time, same weeks, same time, same station. Okay, everybody, have a good night. And, you know, if you got cases, if you got topics, integrative, alternative, complementary medicine versus, you know, the white bread medicine. We need to be able to show that, you know, what we're doing is not only different but better. So, thank you all, and we'll see you again next time. Good night.
Great.
Take care, Dave.